There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our Mom Sense and Dad Sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobbi Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. Our life is quite simply Mother Nature and Father Time at play. Our hours become our days become our years, and before we know it, if we're fortunate enough, we're looking back on decades of memories and experiences. Today, I am humbled to be joined by my distinguished guest, Sahil Bloom. He's a devoted husband and father, entrepreneur, and author of his debut book, The 5 Types of Wealth. He's captivated millions every week through his social insights on his newsletter, The Curiosity Chronicle, and I'm excited to chat with him about all his phases of life and the wisdom he's going to impart to us today. Sahil, welcome to That's Total Mom Sense.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I want to start with your name. You know, taking from William Shakespeare, what's in a name? Sahil in Sanskrit means leader and mountain. And I often tell my kids, as we're weathering storms, whether they are metaphorical or figurative in some shape or form, especially in childhood, be the mountain and always be steadfast in whatever's coming your way. And I feel like you exude that. And secondly, your mom's name is Lakshmi, and Lakshmi Mata is someone who helps us realize our goals. That's really what it's about. So I think it is so serendipitous that you wrote this book and you're the son of Lakshmi.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up. Until this moment, I had yet to put together that connection of the fact that wealth is actually something that is sort of in our names of our family. I knew that my mother's name meant that, but I had not thought about it until you just brought that up. And now I need to text my mom after this and remind her that maybe the origin of all of this came through her.
Yes. Hi, Lakshmi Auntie.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And tell us about your childhood, because you grew up, you know, kind of embracing 2 cultures. I have dear friends. I'm going to give a shout out to Ritu and Mike. They're our favorite Hindu family. And so whether it's Diwali or Hanukkah or the Mandap or the Huppah where they got married, there's so many parallels, and I'd love to hear your...
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. There are actually there is a small Jewish community in, I think, Madras, India, that is, some believe, the lost tribe of Israel that landed there. Wow. And there is like a temple that is in this tiny little enclave of Judaism in the middle of India. It's kind of interesting. My family visited it once. I went with my dad. So it's rather interesting. As you alluded to, I come from a mixed race and religion and, belief set background, I suppose. My mom was born and raised in Bangalore, India, and my dad grew up right around here in the Bronx, New York. Jewish family, not a practicing Jewish family, but a Jewish family from Ukraine originally descent. And I think in many ways, like, my childhood was a collision of 2 worlds. I had this very academically oriented family. My dad's a professor. He's been at Harvard for the last 20 or so years. My mom is also Indian, and so as a result, very academically oriented culture, high achieving. Yes. My mom is also brilliant, probably smarter than my dad, although not a professor. And they met at Princeton by sort of a stroke of fate. They had basically a 2-week window where they overlapped there. My dad was finishing his dissertation. My mom was just starting to study for a master's degree there. She was working in the library to pay her way through. My dad was studying in the library for his dissertation defense. And she asked him out on a date. And they went out on this date. And my dad on the first date said, "My father will never accept us." And my mom was so blinded by his use of the word us that she completely missed the message, which was a rather sad one and turned out to be a true one. My dad's father was not accepting of this courtship and made my dad choose between my mom and his family.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. And
he walked out the door. And to this day, I never met my dad's parents. He has 3 siblings I've never met. I have first cousins out there somewhere that I've never met. Just this like terribly sad thing. But as with many things in life, out of something sad came something really beautiful, which was this ripple effect of love that I feel like has flowed through my sister and my life, and of supportive parents. You know, I think that as parents, we often either amplify or reject the things that we experience from our parents. And I think that my father and his relationship with my sister and I was one of undying support our entire lives with whatever it was that we wanted to pursue. And I think that was really driven by this experience that he had with his father and his desire to sort of reject that and amplify the good of really being there and present in those moments. So I grew up in this household not knowing if I was Indian or if I was white, not knowing if I was a jock because I was good at sports or a nerd because that was what my parents wanted me to be. And there's a lot of struggle with that when you're a kid. I think our mental model as children is to fit in. We don't want to be different. We just want to like know where we fit in the world. And it's one of those funny paradoxes of life, because the thing that works for you as a child, fitting in, is the very thing that actually harms you in adulthood. You know, continuing to be same and normal and 100%. Basic. And the thing that you fear as a child ends up being the thing that you will really want and long for as an adult. So like that distinctiveness that we complain about as a child ends up being the thing that we are so proud of as adults. And I really struggled with it. It bred a lot of insecurity in me. I wasn't as academically oriented as my older sister, who was really the like golden child, just doing all of the things that I feel like my family valued around academics. And I had convinced myself from a young age that I wasn't very smart as a result. And that kind of created this like pattern of behavior where when you have an insecurity, you try to sort of mask that with external achievements, affirmations, you know, doing things that the world is going to pat you on the back for. And so a lot of my decisions, if I were to go back and reflect on them, were made with this sort of negative story that I was telling myself in mind, this insecurity in mind. And it was, you know, take the really high status sounding job. It was, you know, do the things that make you like a big guy. So like, you know, the sports scholarship, pursuing athletics, you know, sort of not like being a bully, like doing all these things that are masking an internal problem with an external solution. And that was a lot of my younger years.
Yes, I know. You went on to play baseball at Stanford, and so you really embraced that jock persona. So tell us about that, because that's its own level of discipline that you have to have.
Yeah, I mean, the Stanford thing is funny for me to say as a non-academically oriented person. And most people's reaction is like, oh, so you weren't academically oriented and then you went to Stanford. I only got in there because I was good at throwing a baseball. I mean, I very much would not have gotten in if not for being good at baseball. And so what happened was like I was getting, you know, B pluses, A minuses in high school, which is great, you know, on like a normal basis. But in my family, I might as well have been failing. My mom was getting very concerned about me and like kept having these talks with me about how I wasn't trying hard enough, how I wasn't considering myself smart. Like they were trying to get me to reject this insecurity that I had, but I wouldn't hear it. And I remember being like, Mom, that might be true, but I need to figure it out for myself. And I actually said that, and now she brings that back up to me. I said that to her. I vocalized that. And I think that's true for a lot of reasons. Like as a kid, you can't actually teach your kids anything. They need to just sort of experience it and live it. It's one of the challenges of being a parent is you have to let your kid fail in those ways, even though you know the exact thing that they're walking towards because you did it yourself. And look, I figured out that I could pursue baseball with all of my intentionality and discipline and effort and get into a great school doing it. And so I really leaned into that, and it worked. And I got a scholarship to go play, and had that experience at Stanford to sort of find my footing. And the experience was rather humbling in that it was the first time I was not the best player on the team. It was the first time I was like not, one of the even like top half, 50th percentile in intelligence in classes. And that was a really important, informative, humbling experience in my journey.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's part of your legacy.
Yes.
100%. Now I want to go into your sister Sonali and being a sibling. And I'm going to start with some stuff that I brought to share that my kids did. This is a parenting show after all. So this is my son Krish's letter to himself. You write to your future self.
Yeah.
So this is his letter.
He's well-rounded, though. He talks about sports, too.
Yeah.
Oh, this is very cute.
And then this is Suhana's letter to Shrey. So Suhana's our mother hen, and she is the nurturer in our family. And she just wrote him a Post-it note.
And they're a year apart?
A year apart. And then the last one, I'm going to hold it up for all to see. So this was Shrey's kindergarten little piece of artwork. And it was, this time it was a picture of your hero. And he put his siblings, his brother and sister. So that's that.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's so sweet. So now I want you to share about you and Sonali, because sibling relationships are their own evolution. And when you became parents, you connected. And it was so sweet. So I have to have you share that.
Yeah. And this is, in the book is the first time I share this. And it's been a real journey, my sister and I. We're 3.5 years apart in age, 4 years in school. And so that's important because we were never really in the same phase of life. We were never in the same season of life, if you will. When she was in high school, I was in middle school. By the time I got to high school, she was in college. By the time I was in college, she was working.
Right.
And so we never found ourselves in this kind of season where we were in the same thing. We always sort of had very separate lives. I also mentioned very academically oriented household. My sister was unbelievably high achieving academically. Maybe to this day still has the highest GPA in our high school's history. Got into every school she applied to. Ended up becoming a physics major at Yale, Harvard Business School grad. She is extremely intelligent, also very diligent, hardworking. Yes. She's now the CEO of a healthcare startup in the Boston area.
2020.
Yeah, exactly. She's incredible. Because of my own insecurity when I was young, that story I was telling myself that I wasn't smart, I grew to resent my sister during those younger years of my life for achieving the things that I wanted to achieve but felt I was unable to. And she grew to resent me because she felt like my parents weren't tough enough on me, on slacking off and on not living up to the things that they had told her were so important.
Right.
And so it kind of created this weird two-way, under-the-surface tension where it wasn't outright fights, it wasn't screaming, it wasn't doing any of those things, but there was this weird, competitive resentment and tension that got created that we never addressed. There was never the hard conversation. And one thing that I've come to learn in life is that when you avoid a hard conversation, you are taking on a debt that you have to repay with interest at some date in the future. Time doesn't heal anything when it comes to relationships. You have to make minor repairs along the way. Otherwise, you have to make major repairs later on. And that was the reality with my sister and I. We saw our relationship sort of atrophy in terms of the amount that we spent time together, the level of connection that we had, to the point where, look, in my late 20s, my sister and I basically didn't have a relationship. Not that we were, I would have showed up. If anything happened, I would have been there. We were still siblings.
But you were about your friends.
We didn't talk. We there was no level of depth and connection. And a beautiful thing happened in really 2022. I had made all these changes in my life. We'd moved across the country to live closer to our parents, to live closer to her, to live closer to our siblings. And my son was born in May of 2022. My sister had had her first child about a year earlier. And everyone came down for when we brought our son home from the hospital. And I remember this moment very clearly, taking a photo. And my sister was holding her son, who was about a year old. I was holding my newborn. And it still makes me.
Yeah, of course. I love that.
I had this moment where I remember looking over at her while we were taking this picture. And I felt like I could see her for the first time. That there was something... It was like there was something about that moment where, almost like we were meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
And that moment sparked a series of interactions where I was able to open up to her about some of those feelings that I had created. She was able to respond with some of the ones she had felt. And it completely transformed our relationship as siblings. And it was a reminder to me of something very powerful, which I write about in the book, which is you never know when certain relationships will blossom in your life, like when they will really take hold. And it's completely possible that you have and will have deep, loving relationships with someone you haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
And that is, that as a message, I think is a very inspiring one, whether it's your sibling, whether it's, friends, people out there. Sometimes relationships take hold when you are ready for them to take hold. Mm-hmm. And it's a really beautiful thing, especially in a sibling relationship, because your sibling is the only person that you are there with your entire life from start to finish.
100%. My husband actually said that in his brother's wedding speech.
Yeah.
He said, your parents are with you for their lifetime. You are with your kids for their lifetime, but your siblings are with you through it all.
Yeah. And it's true. And it's also, they are the person that you are going to navigate some of the most challenging things that happen in your life with. Obviously, your partner is there, but your partner won't feel the loss of your parents in the same way that you and your sibling will. Mm-hmm. And God willing, the natural order of things is that you both have to experience that and nothing bad happens in the other direction. And having a bond with that person and being in a place where you feel like you are strong enough to navigate those challenges that come, I just think is it's all we can really ask for. And so I share that in the book in the hopes that it connects with someone out there to have those conversations, to rekindle those relationships with their sibling in the way that I felt we did.
Yes. And that's why I brought it up. That's why I brought it up, because our relationships can stagnate. And I think having the tough conversations is what can turn it around. Now I want to just touch on your wife, Elizabeth, and your son, Roman. I feel like they give us a newfound purpose in our lives. And Sunil and I talk about this all the time. I think the biggest make or break decision in your life is who you choose to spend your life with. So tell us about her and your story.
Yeah. Elizabeth and I met, actually, I think 18 years ago today.
Wow,
I got a Facebook reminder. It's not our anniversary. It's an even funnier story.
Yeah.
I got a Facebook reminder of one of those 18 years ago today things.
Yeah.
Because she was a freshman in high school. I was a sophomore, and we were on this class trip for our chorus that we were both in. We didn't know each other, and we were at the UN just nearby here on this class trip to New York. And she had gotten separated from her group of friends, and so was standing by herself at the UN. And I was cool, older guy, I'm gonna go try to talk to this freshman girl, and was probably 0% smooth. Went over, tried to talk to her, got completely rejected, and she walked away, whatever it was, and here we are 18 years later, married with a child. So clearly I won in the end. No, but we later that same year we started dating. She was 15 at the time. I was 16, and we have been together since. And, you know, when you talk about that idea of seasons of life, there is no one that I have grown through the different seasons of life with more than my wife. And I say the word grown very specifically because there is a big focus on falling in love as a society. It's sort of the thing that we all hear about is like, oh, falling in love with someone. And, you know, it's the Instagram moments and the perfect pictures and the, you know, filtered moments and whatnot. And the reality that people want to ignore to their own detriment is that most of life does not look like that. Most of life is a whole bunch of doing nothing, honestly. It is a lot of sitting on the couch, watching TV shows, cleaning up with your kids, you know, long days at work, working on things, venting about things, whatever it might be. And when you find someone that you are excited to do that with, to truly grow with across those different seasons, the seasons of joy and fun, the seasons of grief and sorrow, the seasons of stagnation, whatever the season is, when you find someone that you're willing to go on that entire journey with, that is your person. Yeah. And my wife has been on that entire journey with me. I mean, I was not a great present human being during certain seasons of of our life together, and she has navigated all of that with me and been an incredible balancing force and a person that has provided me with strength and belief in myself and moments when I didn't believe. And for that, I am forever grateful. And today, most importantly, I am just blown away by the mother that she is to our son, and the amount of love that she has for him and the amount of care that she takes in being a mother, the amount of joy that I see it bring her every single day. I just feel incredible gratitude because I tend to think that one of the highest forms of gratitude and appreciation that you can have as a man is knowing that if you die, if I drop dead tomorrow, my son is going to have an amazing life. And I'm perfectly fine dropping dead tomorrow. Yeah. I don't want to, obviously, but I'm perfectly fine because I know that he is going to have an incredible life. He is taken care of. Yes. And I think that is fundamentally like what you want as a human being is for your children. You know your children are going to be okay. My mom to this day, every single time her and my dad get on a plane together, sends a text with this like long list of instructions of what happens to them, because she still has this like fundamental biological urge to make sure that her children are going to be okay. We're grown up, like we're totally on our own. We're not on the payroll anymore. Like everything's good, but she still has this urge. And so I think that I feel an immense amount of gratitude to my wife for that, of just like seeing that in her. That has been an incredible thing.
That's beautiful. And I completely relate to it. I think, you know, my kids are why I am who I am and why I show up in the world the way I do. I feel like they are really the North Star for everything. And if I didn't have Sunil by my side, there would be a void. So we're in it together.
Yeah, and it's interesting when people talk about that with kids sort of being the North Star and you're like living the way you show up in the world for your kids. I feel like there's this misconception that often happens with, and I write about this in the book, that it's not about your entire life being lived for your kids, but it is about everything that you do being reflected and embodied by your kids.
Right.
And so I talk about, there's this chapter in the book called The Days Are Long, but the Years Are Short. And it's all about this idea that fundamentally you kind of have, people think you have, you know, all these years with your kids. You basically have like 10 years where you are truly their favorite person in the entire world.
Yeah.
And after that, they have other favorite people. I mean, you're probably starting to see it with your kids that like they have best friends that they want to spend, you know, the weekend with rather than you. They have parties, they have things to go to, they have girlfriends, boyfriends, they have, you know, partners and kids of their own at some point, and you'll never really occupy that same place in their world. And so that 10-year window, we're naturally wrestling with this tension between our desire to be present and our own personal ambitions, the things that we want to create in the world, the impact that we want to create, the things we want to build. And the way that I wrestle with it is it's very important for you to show them, not to teach them, but to show them that working hard on things that you care about, that building something that's grounded in your purpose is a lesson that they need to learn for their entire life.
Yes.
And so by living that way, that's the only way that they'll understand that. I learned that from my dad.
They will do as you do.
Totally. 100%. And that's true for anything in life, that the best way to, you know, find the thing that you are looking for is to embody it yourself. Like I always say this to my friends who are trying to date. It's like you make this long list of things that you want to find in a partner. How many of those things are you embodying yourself as a human being? Like, I have a good friend who like talks about how he like broke up with this girl because she wanted to go through his phone, and I was like, well, was there stuff on your phone that you wouldn't have wanted her seen? He was like, yes, but that's not the point. And I was like, well, if you're not, a trusting person, like how can you expect to be trusted? Like there's just this cognitive dissonance that happens. And I just think about this all the time, that the thing is every single day your kids are picking up on what you're doing. I am in a season right now where I'm really focused on this book launch and reaching people with this message. And I'm working really hard and I'm traveling a lot, which I don't love. I don't love being away from my son and my wife. But he is understanding more and more what I'm doing. And like he sees the books and I'm showing him and trying to show like the dedication pages for my wife and him. And like he doesn't fully understand it yet, but it's there. He understands like when I need to work, and he's like, he now likes to mimic me working and like sitting at a little computer. And so there's signs, right? Like your kids are picking up on the things you're doing, positive and negative.
Right. And I love that, you practice what you preach in embodying everything you wrote in those pages, because there are a lot of charlatans out there. And, of course, in the finance space, but also in the parenting space. There's just so many that are like, this is what you have to do when you have toddlers. This is what you have to. And the reason why I started this show, honestly, was because coming from my journalism background, I felt like I have an objective view. It's important to understand both sides of the story, and also be a purveyor of the stories and the lessons, because there's no such thing as a parenting expert or a finance expert who's going to like change your life with their course or their book or what have you. So I love that you are that way.
I think it's really hard to give anyone the answers for their life.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing for me to say, publishing a self-help or self-improvement book. And I actually say it like in the first couple pages. I literally explicitly say this book will not have the answers for you, which my publisher was like, wait, are you sure? And I was like, yes. Because the book does not give you the answers. What it does do is it helps you ask the right questions so that you can sit with those questions and come for the right answers for your life. Because my fundamental belief is that you actually already have the answers within you on all of these topics. You know what really matters. You know the qualities that you're looking for, the values. You know what's important to you, but you haven't asked the right questions yet to reveal those things, to actually action on them in your own life.
Yes, exactly. Now I want to take us through a little exercise where we're going to kind of reparent ourselves. I recently had pro volleyball player Gabby Reese on the show, and she did a session with, his name is Dr. Richard Schwartz, and he has a therapy kind of system called internal family systems, and he allows you to go back in time and speak to your younger self. So I wanted to do that because even the book really highlights various times in your life, past, present, and future. So if you were to go back to, your 6-year-old Sahil, what would you say to him to parent him? And again, this is something that, our audience can take a cue from as they're raising their toddlers and young elementary schoolers now.
6-year-old Sahil, so like first grade. I think the biggest thing I would say is to continue to just reinforce this idea that you are quite literally capable of achieving anything you put your mind to, as long as you're willing to put in the work to achieve it.
Yes.
And I feel like that was one of the best messages I got from my parents, my dad especially. And part of that was a message that I remember him saying, and part of it was a message that I just remember seeing him exhibit and how he lived and how hard he worked. And still to this day, my dad is the hardest working guy that I know. He's 70 years old. He's still working just as hard because it's on things that he cares about.
Yes.
But that message stuck with me in everything that I did. I mean, I was not that talented at baseball. I really made the most of my talent. to get a scholarship in the way that I did and to have the career that I did. I think reinforcing that message is really important. I'm not big on like, the whole like fixed versus growth mindset thing has become a big trend of you should tell them, praise their effort rather than their achievement. And I sort of have like a mixed perspective on that, which is you may love your inputs and you actually probably should focus on your inputs. But at the end of the day, the world judges you for your outputs. Yeah. And that's a harsh reality of life, but it's true. Like you can't go to someone and be like, well, I worked really hard on this thing. If it's not good, it doesn't matter. Like if your boss says it's not good, or if you create a product, you're an entrepreneur, you create a product or launch a business and no one buys it, no one cares that you worked hard on it or that you put in a lot of effort and your inputs were really good. You had deep work, you did your systems, your rituals, your morning routine. No one cares.
Nobody cares. And Sunil actually says this too. He's like, there's no 8th place medal. I'm sorry.
No, there's not. And like, my parents were tough. Like the real key to all of this, as I break it down, is a combination of high expectations and high support. Those are the 2 pillars of strong relationships and really the 2 pillars of strong parenting, in my view, because high expectations are that. It's like, I have high expectations for what you can achieve. To my son, I have high expectations. I think that he is incredible. I think he's capable of absolutely anything. I'm going to have high expectations. But pair that with high support, that I'm going to be there to support you to go and achieve those things. I'm going to be there and support you in any way imaginable that I can possibly do, to be there to help you, lift you up on my shoulders to achieve those things. High expectations in the absence of high support, very dangerous, breeds resentment, because then you feel like, oh my God, the person expects me to do all these things, but I have no idea how to do them. How am I going to do it? Yeah. Same thing in organizations. Like if you want to create a great culture, high expectations and high support. People should know they're going to be lifted up and supported to go and achieve those levels. But that to me, those 2 pillars are really where great parenting lies.
Yes.
And I don't have a course to sell on that.
I know, exactly. I love that you don't.
I just believe it.
Nor should you. That's great. And then let's skip ahead to tweens and teenage years where we're building our independence. I feel like we all have been teenagers, so we know that phase of life when you're rebellious and smug and feel like you have all your shit figured out and you don't. And as we're raising Gen Alpha, I wonder what they're going to be like, And so, again, back to this teenage Sahil and now thinking of Roman.
Yeah, I wish someone could have like grabbed me and shaken me during those years, frankly. I'm just really not proud of the person I was in high school. I don't think I was opening up to my parents enough or close enough to them during those years for them to have realized this either. So like I actually don't know if they could have done anything about it. But there was so much that I was just hiding from the world, insecurity that was grounded in these stories that I was telling myself. And then it was manifesting in the world in a very negative way, which was like, I don't feel good about myself, so I'm going to lash out at other people and, be a bully and like play this character of this like tough, high school athlete, thinking I'm cool, talking to girls, like not being nice to people that are like struggling in their own ways because I'm not feeling good. And look, it's like the classic archetype of the high school
like she's all
bully.
that.
Yeah, it's just like, and I feel a level of shame associated with it, to be totally honest, and guilt, where I went to my 10-year high school reunion, and prior to going to it, I was like, I'm a very different person now, and I was going to this high school reunion, and I was like having this thought in my mind that the last impression that the 99% of these people have of me is one that I am actually quite ashamed of that human being and who I was. Okay. And it was really sad to me that I was like, I'm going to go to this thing, and their first impression of me is not going to be one that I am proud of. Yeah. And so I went with this like super open mindset of like, I want to make sure that these people know like who I actually am. And it was a rather healing experience, actually. Like I basically hung out with all the kids who were like the not cool kids in high school when I was at this.
Like the outliers.
The people that I had felt like I had not really been nice to and good to. And I spent basically the whole night like hanging out with them because they were like awesome, and they had just embraced their like weird quirky selves their whole life. And so they were like pretty natural and normal. And like the cool kids who were like my friends, when I would talk to them or spend time with them, a lot of them were saying the exact same things that they were saying when they were in high school. And to me, I was like, there hasn't been the level of change and growth that you want to experience as a human being.
Yes.
And it made me sad. I also had a reflection that like my group of friends that I had in high school, very few are still friends with each other, where like the kids who were kind of quirky, but they were themselves in high school are still like have these tight knit bonds with those groups that they had formed.
Yeah.
And so it's also just, I'm like, I wish I could have shaken myself a bit and just, I don't know if you could do anything about it. I don't know how much is actually changeable, but I could have used someone slapping me in the face and just being like, you're not cool. You're not like being like being kind to people is the coolest thing that you can do, especially people that need that kindness. So if there's one message that I really want my son to be a kind human being. Like I want my son to be the type of person who, when he sees someone that's struggling, reaches out to them versus like walks away or kicks them again.
Yeah.
And that bums me out about my own experience as a human.
No, but I mean the fact that you are cycle breaking.
Yeah.
Now, that's amazing. And I actually did an interview recently with her name is Sarah Harbison. She's America's college counselor. She's amazing. I'll send it to you. But she says you don't want to peak in high school.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Skipping ahead to parenting and this phase of life, and where we're really just guiding and being a lighthouse. And again, still want to fulfill our purpose, because you mentioned this in other interviews too. It's like, in your 30s and 40s is when you're at your peak of your game in your career. But, if you are with young kids, you want to be with them too. So you're kind of torn. So what advice do you have for like this phase of life?
I think that the advice is just to really learn to navigate that tension between presence and ambition, and define your own version of what balance looks like across those two things. The presence is being there with your partner and with your kids, truly present in the moment, energy. And the ambition is the things that you're trying to build and the things that you're trying to do. And the way that I think you navigate that tension is by making sure that your people, that's your partner and your children, are included in the why of why you are pursuing that ambition. And the reason I think that's so important is because kids especially, if they don't have the why, they fill it with the worst version, which is dad doesn't want to be around, mom doesn't want to be around, dad and mom don't care about me. That's what they fill it with. And unless you fill it with the correct reason, which is that you are trying to build something that you think matters, that you are trying to provide for the family, that you're working on something you really care about, and then they feel like they're part of a mission. Right? Like kids want to feel like they're part of a mission. They want to feel like they're part of the thing that you are doing. Yeah. And so I've always been a big believer in this like life-changing power of missions. Like you have a few missions in life. You have your professional mission, maybe you have a personal mission, a health mission, and you want the people around you to be people that are on those missions with you. And like very much every single time my wife says some phrase of like, you're publishing a book, I'm like, we're publishing a book. Like you've been, I mean, my wife was a huge part of the cover design of this book.
Oh,
like,
sweet.
They're obviously in the book throughout. Like I very much believe in that idea of like, I want to go through life with people that are on these missions with me. And quite honestly, I don't really have time for people who aren't on those missions with me.
Right.
I'm not trying to be like a jerk about it. I have a few missions in life. I have limited energy. Yeah. And the people that I really want to surround myself with are people who are on one of those missions.
On that path, yeah.
That doesn't mean that I don't have time for like an occasional beer or, coffee or hang out with a person that's not. But for the most part, people are either on my boats or they're not.
Yes. And I'm with you. I have done my own weed out process. I'm, in my early 40s, and I feel like it's been such an amazing reckoning, because I have let go of, not let go, but like maybe done an Irish exit on a lot of the summer friends, and I hold on to my winter friends.
I love Irish exits.
Yeah.
That's good.
Have to. So they don't
I
even
Irish
know.
exit from every single like group dinner that I've ever gone to. I totally agree. By the way, this is a random thing, but at what point does early become mid in age? Because I just turned 34 and someone asked me how old I was and I was like early 30s, and then I was like, wait, I think I'm mid 30s now.
I mean 35 exactly, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think 34, I crossed the chasm. I think I have to say mid 30s now. I'm like, man, that made me feel old.
Yes. Okay, last question that's really going to make you feel old, but I love that you bring this up in the book, is you want to be dancing when you're 80. And, I think it's so important to have a vision for that time of your life. So what are you telling your 80-year-old self?
I think what I'm telling them is that I did my best. I did my best to leave the house in good order for them. The physical and mental house and the relationships, all of the things that I do today. The way that I think about life, frankly, is compounding. And you kind of know that from a financial standpoint, and everyone thinks of finances that way. You know that if you invest $100 today or $10 today, it's going to grow into the future and do better for you. And we know that $100 today is better than $0 today. Frankly, $1 today is better than $0 today. But you don't think about other areas of life that way. I do. And that's a lot of what the book, The Call to Action, is like your relationships, exact same principle applies. A little bit invested today benefits you in the long run. And making those daily investments really pays off in the long run. Your physical health, same exact thing. Doing a 10-minute walk is better than doing nothing. Doing a 30-minute walk is better than a 10-minute walk. Like, making those investments benefits you into the future. And so a lot of what I think about in my own life is these daily disciplines that we're developing. They are the ultimate act of service to that future self. And so you are acting because they are the greatest heir to every action that you are taking in the present. If you make a bunch of short-term decisions now, you will pay for it down the line. And you see it quicker than you ever imagined. I went to my 10-year college reunion, and the difference in the face of people who took care of themselves over that 10 years and who didn't is striking. I mean, there were 32-year-olds or whatever it was at it that look like they're 50. And there are 32-year-olds who look like they're 25.
Exactly.
And it makes a big difference. And it's literally that your daily habits show up on your face after 10 years. Now imagine how your daily habits show up on your face after 20, after 30, after 40.
Right.
And so I would love to be able to say to my 80-year-old self that I did my best. And that, I made trade-offs where I needed to. I'm not, Brian Johnson. I'm not optimizing every single area of these things. I have things that I need to balance and make trade-offs around, but that I did my best. Yes.
That's brilliant. So now let's dive into 5 types of wealth and how all-encompassing each one, like each pillar really is, and give us a tangible takeaway that we can enact today to work towards our goals.
Yeah. So this whole idea, I mean, we've been winding around a lot of it, but the idea with the 5 types of wealth is you've been measuring the wrong thing, or at least an incomplete thing when it comes to your life, which is money. Money is the default scoreboard for how you measure your life. And it is one thing, and it is an important thing, making money and having a certain amount of money, but it is not the only thing. And when you measure one thing, that means you try to optimize and you focus on that one thing. What gets measured gets managed is a famous quote. So the idea in the book and the concept is we need to measure for the much bigger picture of our entire lives. Because then when we measure the right things, we take the right actions and we create the right outcomes. The outcomes that we actually want our 80-year-old self to experience as we go on this journey. So the book is broken into 5 sections. Time wealth is the first one, social wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, and then financial wealth. Each section is sort of the theory and then also a guide which breaks down actual actions you can take to go build that type of wealth into your life. There's 50 or so of those actions, all science-backed, proven across the entire spectrum. Time wealth is all about your ability to choose who you spend your time with, where you spend it, how you spend it, when you trade it for other things. It's about an awareness of the finite, impermanent nature of time as your most precious asset. An action I think that anyone can take today is to do what I call the energy calendar exercise in the book. The idea is to look at your calendar during the course of a week and color code things according to whether it created energy, mark it green, neutral, mark it yellow, or drained your energy, mark it red. At the end of a week, you'll have a very clear perspective on the types of activities that are energy creating versus energy draining. And you'll have sort of marching orders of how to lean into more of the energy creators and how you can slowly lean away from some of the energy drainers. If you do that, you'll feel a big unlock in your time, because when you lean into things that are creating energy, you create better outcomes in a smaller amount of time. And that will improve your life, means that you can redeploy some of that time into things you care about. Social wealth is all about your relationships, your depth and breadth of connection to the world around you. I think that the first exercise I would really think about with social wealth for building it would just be creating a sort of map of your existing relationships, to create an awareness of the frequency of interaction with the people that you're interacting with, and then the quality of that interaction on a scale from very toxic, demeaning to very supportive. What that does is it gives you a sense of the relationships that you should be leaning into more. The ones where, it's not that frequent, but they're very supportive. Mm-hmm. And then also the ones you should be leaning away from. The ones that are too frequent and they're very demeaning or ambivalent, which can be really harmful.
Right.
It'll give you a good picture on your life. Mental wealth is all about purpose, growth, and your ability to create space in your life to wrestle with these bigger picture unanswerable questions through meditation, through spirituality, religion, through solitude. Mental wealth exercise I love is like a 3 to 5 minute evening journaling exercise. I call it my 1-1-1 method. Yeah. You sit down with a blank piece of paper, write down one win from the day, something that you felt good about, one point of stress or tension, something that you need to get off your brain and onto the paper, and then one point of gratitude, something you felt grateful for.
I do this. I love it.
Super simple, takes 3 minutes, and you feel better and fall asleep much easier at night. Mm-hmm. Fourth, physical wealth. This is all about your health and vitality. It is taking the daily actions to control the controllables so that you can fight off the natural atrophy in your body and slow that decay curve, if you will, during your life. In terms of a quick action, I think that these breathing protocols that I include in the book can be really effective for people for de-stressing themselves when they start to feel like you start to feel too elevated in certain moments. One in particular is for sleep, which is called the 4-7-8 method. Idea is to inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for a 7 count, and then exhale through your mouth for an 8 count. If you do about 5 reps of that while you're lying in bed, if you're struggling to fall asleep, you'll have a sense of calm come over you. You'll fall asleep more easily. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, helps you relax and fall asleep. Last one is financial wealth, all about money. Yeah. But importantly, this is all about clearly defining what enough looks like to you.
Yes.
Having a clear sense of what your enough life looks like. And so the exercise here is to actually visualize and create a visual of what that version of your enough life looks like. Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? What are you working on? What are you thinking about? What do you have? What kind of car? Where's your home? All of those things. Create a clear picture in your mind so that as you get close to it or as you have it, you understand that. It doesn't become this irrational inflation that naturally occurs with numbers.
Yes, yes. And that's something that, Sunil and I talk about all the time. We do quarterly financial review, and I think it's so important to do this with your partner because it's not just calculating, your own P&L, but it's also what are you bringing to the table and what's your mental focus on for the month and making sure you get the support around that. So I think that's really important. I'd love for you to share the story about the fisherman. And how that's so there's perspective there on what's enough.
So an investment banker goes down and visits a Mexican fishing village and comes across this fisherman in a boat who's caught a few fish. And he asks, how long did it take you to catch those fish? And the fisherman says, just a little while. And the banker is confused. He's like, why didn't you fish for longer? And the fisherman says, oh, well, I have everything I need. I fish for a little while in the morning. I go have lunch with my wife. I take a nap. And then I go into town and drink wine and play music with my friends. And the banker's like, you're clearly confused. You could fish for longer. You catch more fish. Once you catch more fish, you make more money. You buy a second boat. Then they fish. They catch a bunch more fish. They make money. You buy a third boat. You buy a fourth boat. You create this fleet of boats. You move to the big city. You take your company public. You'll make millions of dollars. The fisherman looks at him and says, and then what? The banker says, well, then you can retire. You can move to a small town. You can fish for a little while in the morning. You can go home, have lunch with your wife, take a nap, go into town, drink wine, play music with your friends. And the fisherman kind of looks at him and smiles and then just walks off into the distance. And, look, the story is a wonderful one. And the traditional interpretation is that the banker is wrong and the fisherman is right. And I actually disagree with that. I think that the story is about defining what matters to you and going and building your life around it. Mm-hmm. The banker just values different things. The banker wants to build big things and finds value in doing that and purpose in creating something and maybe creating jobs and doing these things. The fisherman doesn't. The fisherman has what he wants. He has his version of his enough life. And the important point and the meta point of the entire book is define what matters to you, not what matters to other people, not what they tell you you should care about, not what society tells you, your family tells you, what actually matters to you, and then go take actions every single day to build your life around those things.
I love that. I think it just gives us so much perspective on what's propelling us and why. And now on to something I love asking my guests is your dad sense moment. And by that, I mean mom sense is our built-in sixth sense, and it's something that we all have. It's our inner knowing. I just like the pun and the play on words, which is why the podcast is named that. So when it comes to your dad sense, if you have a point in time where you're like, I am going to trust this, and it just worked out.
That is a good question. I wasn't a dad yet at the time, but I think the decision to leave my prior job and make this change to live closer to our families was a dad sense moment. I wasn't a father yet, although my son was in the process of being conceived at the time, so maybe it was technically dad sense.
There you go.
But yeah, that would be it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember you sharing this story on another interview where you said it was just this moment where God winked at you.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's really beautiful. And tell us where we can find you and where we can find your book and your newsletter, everything.
The book is available now anywhere books are sold. Would love for you to pick up a copy. You can find more information at the5typesofwealth.com, and then you can find me at Sahil Bloom on any platform.
Thank you, Sahil. Thank you. And I can't wait to read my physical copy. And I want to share with the audience that you earmarked portions that I would like. And that's just how intentional Sahil is to do that for all those that he's interacting with. So thank you so much for being so thoughtful and for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is at Kanika Chadda Gupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.